you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast. The hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hello, this is Voss here from the ChrisVossShow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, there are these things that makes official. Welcome to the big show. As always, the Chris Voss Show is the family that loves you but doesn't judge you, at least not as harshly as the rest of the world, because you know what? You're just here trying to learn stuff. Just learn some stuff. You're trying to learn stuff, and you're trying to get to know your life better, manage it, and all that stuff. Because, you know, the people that improve themselves, they're constantly improving themselves, those are usually some of the best people in the world. And we're going to get into it. We've got an amazing author on the show. We'll be talking to him. But in the meantime, I need to guilt, persuade you, cajole you, shame you. No, don't do any of that, Chris. Into referring the show to your family, friends, and relatives, go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss, one of the TikTokity, and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book success. Today, amazing young man on the show, Scott Drummond, joins us. He was dead for 20 minutes, and he came back just to tell you and the Chris Voss Show podcast what happened. Plus, he has a cool book on it, too. It is entitled... Sorry, that cracked me up, that setup I did. What Dying Taught Me About Living, out June 12th, 2023. Scott Drummond, of course, you can look him up on the interwebs in the sky or anywhere on those, what do they call it? The Amazonian, as it were. Not located in the Amazon, but the Amazon online. Scott was drafted to the Vietnam War at 18. He played all-Army baseball and basketball and eventually earned a coveted spot as a professional baller for a German club. He married his sweetheart in Germany, and their nearly 50 years of marriage has blessed him with 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and joyous memories that will last an eternity. Upon his release from the Army, he played for Brigham Young University for baseball. While he attended classes there, the U.S. Postal Service hired him with an offer he couldn't refuse. Wait, that sounds like an interesting... This sounds like something from The Godfather. What's going on there? After 30 years, they finally let him go. And he retired as a respected postmaster. His interests include sports, vegetable, and flower gardening, and traveling as often as possible with Connie, his wife. I'm sure his wife really appreciates all that traveling because women love to travel. They love to see new things. One of the highlights of their career, or their life together, has been serving 2 missions for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. And he's the author of the latest book we aforementioned and a foundation called GracieScott.org, which serves children with special needs. His original podcast 3 years ago has over 25 million views, and he enjoys talking to good people around the world, which is why we're here, because we have good people in the audience. Welcome to the show, Scott. How are you?
It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Me to come.
So give us a .coms, .orgs, where else, any place else you want people to find you on the interwebs?
No, we're on Facebook. We're on the website. We're just fortunate to have a lot of good people want to contact us.
Everywhere and anywhere. So give us a 30,000 overview of what's inside your new book.
The book came out in August of 23. It wasn't on my bucket list, but it was something that I was asked to do. We came out one day, and I was talking to a friend of mine down at the River Trail, and he told me, he says, "I understand you're not afraid to die." And I told him, yes, that's the truth. And he said, "How would you like to talk to people about it, my podcast?" And I said, "No." He asked me again. He says, "I think you could help a lot of people." And I said, "No." And the third time he asked me, he told me, he said, with all the people that are dying around the world because of COVID-19, I think you could help a lot of people.
Yeah.
And after doing a lot of thinking about it and praying about it, we found out that it wasn't all about me, but it was about the one.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're talking about the one, you're talking about the 99 and one. And when that happened, I decided, okay, I will do it, but only on one condition, that you just let me tell my story and then I'll walk away from it. I don't want anybody to ask me any questions.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ever watched the original podcast, I was in an old golf shirt. I'd been golfing. I did not want to do the interview. I sat out in the parking lot, and finally my wife said, "What are you going to do?" We walked in there and did the interview. It was almost life-changing because my story started actually 40 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was 28 years old. I had an experience where I died for 20 minutes.
Wow.
And it was a simple operation. It all started because of a skiing activity up at Park City. And we were skiing and having a great time. And a lady came down and poles were going every which way. She had a stacked cake on her head, which was a fur hat. And she ran into about 4 of us that was in the lift line.
Oh, wow.
And we all fell down, picked her back up, and got her on her way. And I continued to ski the rest of the day. At the end of the day, I went down to the car and started taking off my skis and my boots, took off my left glove, and then I took my right glove off. When I took my right glove off, my fingers were up like this, but my thumb was hanging down to the side of my arm.
So your glove had held everything together.
It held it all together, and it was so cold that day that I didn't even notice it.
Oh, wow.
But when that happened, my friend who was skiing with me said, "I can't fix that with a Band-Aid." He was an EMT. And so we made a call, and back then, we didn't have cell phones. So we made a call from the resort, and my wife, bless her heart, had everything all set up for us at the hospital. And as you start going down from the ski resort, you're in a warm car, and the thumb starts to be very painful because things aren't quite where they're supposed to be.
Yeah.
But as we got down to the hospital, my wife had everything all set up. We walked into the hospital. They got me all prepped. They put me on the chair or the bed, the gurney, and they started wheeling me back to the operating room. And I'll never forget that day because, Chris, it was all about money for me. I was moving up in the industry. I was 28 years old. I had a goal of being a millionaire by the time I was 32. And I wasn't going to work another day of my life. And as I was being wheeled in on the gurney, I looked at my wife, and it's almost as if it's today that it happened. I never told her I loved her. I never told her to tell my 3 kids at the time. We have 4 now. But that I never told her to tell the kids that I loved them because it was something that I never grew up with. It was all about just doing what was expected of you. And when I walked by and I said, "We'll see you later," it was as if my life could have been over right then. And I wouldn't have had a chance to tell her those things. When they wheeled me into the operating room, they had, the anesthesiologist all set up. And all of a sudden, they got called away on another emergency. And the doctor had performed what they call a bear block. It's spelled BEIR, block. And what they do is they raise your arm up, they drain all the blood out, and then they put an air tourniquet on your arm, which has 2 valves on it. Then they drop it down when all the blood is drained. and then they do a local in the thumb.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that he had done many, many times. Unfortunately, that nurse had never performed this type of a surgery before, but she was confident that the doctor could talk her through the surgery. And I had full confidence because of their professionalism.
Yeah.
So what they did is they laid me on the table. They put a sheet between me and where they were working. They laid my arm out on the table, and they started performing the surgery. As the surgery started going, I started feeling pressure in my right arm. And the doctor instructed her to release the valve, one of the valves, and that would relieve pressure on the arm, which it did. And it was interesting because I could hear everything that they were saying to me.
Really?
It's just that they were on the other side of the sheet. So I couldn't see how they were operating on me or see anything of that nature. But as the operation started going on, I started feeling pressure coming on my arm again.
Mm.
And of course, the nurse just reached up automatically and opened the second valve. What she was supposed to do was close the first valve and then open the second valve.
So she brought oxygen in.
And so what happened was the medicine came out of my thumb, went across my chest into my heart. The next thing I knew was the most strange sensation that you could ever imagine. I felt myself lifting out of my body.
Wow.
And the next thing I knew, I was standing above my body and I was watching them work on me.
Wow.
Now, when the monitor flatlined, that poor nurse went running out of the room and said that she had killed me.
Oh, no.
And I'll never forget the emotions of that because you could see fear and anguish as she was running out.
Mm.
The emergency medical team, when she ran out, come running in. And they came in with the paddles, and they came in and cut my gown up and started putting monitors all over my chest. And a person was beating on my chest trying to get me to come back.
Wow.
And I was watching all this above. But what was so unique was there was a person standing beside me. I was not allowed to look at him, but what they were doing is they were talking to me through my mind. But on the other hand, I could hear everyone running around the operating room verbally. It was an interesting concept because of knowing that he was talking to me through my mind, but yet I could hear everything that was going on in the room.
Yeah.
And we sat there and we watched it. And the doctor was so diligent. I mean, he continued to work because on my thumb, I watched him cut a tendon out of my arm.
Jeez.
I watched him wrap it around my thumb. And I actually watched him put a pin in my thumb and observed the pin being just a little bit too big. And so he pulled the pin out and he trimmed it up because he didn't want it to protrude through the skin. And as we were watching that, the person that was standing next to me was really happy with what was going on down there. And the most unusual thing, Chris, was I didn't recognize the person that was laying on the table. It was the most different feeling because looking down there, wondering why that person wasn't moving.
So you didn't even recognize yourself, huh?
I did not recognize it. It wasn't until that person that was standing next to me said, "It's time to go." And I looked over and realized that that person looked just like me.
Wow.
I went, Chris, to somewhere that it was just so undescribable, but I'm going to try to describe it to you the best I can so that people might feel what I felt. I went into an open field. It was the most beautiful field that I'd ever been in. And on the far, I was allowed to look to my left, to my right, and in front of me. But the person that was standing next to me, and this time he was on my left side, which I don't think it's either rhyme or reason, but he was standing there, and he told me I was not allowed to look back.
Mm.
And with that being said, through my mind, I knew that I wasn't allowed to look back or go back to where I was before. But I was allowed to stand there and feel things that I had never felt before, see colors that I had never seen before, and see the beauty of the clouds that were in front of me. Now, to the far left, and by the way, Chris, it was as if it was a panoramic type view. I could see a long ways to the left, a long ways to the right. I could see in front of me, but I was not allowed to look back.
Wow.
But to the far left was tall trees, the most beautiful trees that I had ever seen in my life, but I had never seen that type of a tree before. And what was so unusual, it wasn't until about 3 months ago that I finally found that tree.
Oh, really?
And it was called a baobab tree.
Baobab.
And that tree is in Madagascar. And when I saw that tree, it was magical because it was something that I had seen, and I saw the colors exactly the same way. Now, when you see a tree, you think of a bark on the side of the tree, and it's dirty. This tree, being a baobab tree, is a very smooth tree, and it had browns that I had never seen before. They were brilliant browns, but yet the edges of them were trimmed in gold, and it was the most comforting feeling. And as I looked up the trees, the leaves were all up at the top, and these trees, the leaves were just beautiful. They were brilliant reds, a brilliant bright red, a brilliant light red, a brilliant green, and a brilliant light green in color. But yet the underneath colors of the leaves were gold. And they were beautiful, and they were like a forest, but yet they were lined up from where I could see to my side up to where the cloud was, as if to guide me up to that cloud. Now, to the left, Chris, was the most beautiful flowers that I have ever seen. And the unique part about these flowers was they were all facing towards me. Now, there was no wind whatsoever, but those flowers were flowing towards me. And it was, when you look at a flower, you have to walk all the way around it to see the leaves and the flowers. No, every one of them were facing towards me. And every one of those flowers gave off an energy that I had never, ever felt before. It was the most comforting, peaceful feeling that I had ever experienced, as if each one of them were giving me love. And when I'm talking about love, I'm talking about a pure, unconditional love, which gives you total peace. Now, you would think being in a situation like that you would feel anxious or wondering what's going to go on. It was none of that. It was the most peaceful, calming feeling that I'd ever felt.
Wow.
Now in front of me, Chris, was grass, and to the right of me was grass. And each one of those strands of grass were a soft green color on the bottom for the stem, but the tips were gold in color. And every one of the strands of grass were flowing towards me. It was the most calming, most peaceful feeling that I'd ever experienced, and I'd never felt peace like that in my life ever, and growing up.
That is amazing.
What happened after that was something that I did not expect at all. I noticed that the person that was with me was gone, and I could not see him, but I knew that they were not there anymore. What happened next was I watched my life from the day I was born, from the day that my Heavenly Mother handed me to my earthly mother and entrusted her with taking care of her child. It was the most peaceful scenery that I had ever seen.
Huh.
We don't talk a lot about our Heavenly Mother, but I believe that there is one. And she stands side by side with our Father in heaven.
Mm-hmm.
I watched how my mother raised me and how she loved me and how she cherished me. And she wanted only the best for me. And I was her first child. So therefore, she put a lot of energy into me.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, I didn't see it in a video form.
Mm-hmm.
I watched it happen within my mind. And not only did I watch between the age of 0 to 28, I felt every emotion of everyone that I'd come in contact with.
Wow.
And, growing up, Chris, I made a lot of mistakes. I did some things right, but I made a lot of mistakes. And I wasn't very good to a lot of people because I was so money driven.
Mm.
And playing sports, you only have to be just that much better to go from the high school level to the college level to the pro level. And my goal was to make it to that pro level. And I did. And it was something that I was very proud of at the time. But what I felt was every emotion of every person that I was in competition with or who I had worked with. And we don't know what other people are going through. And I didn't know what all these other people were going through. People that had had a death in the family, that had interviewed for a job that I was anxious and hungry to have because it was going to give me more money.
Mm.
And I learned and was taught that money is not the driving factor. It's how you treat other people.
Now, was that something you learned while you were passed away for 20 years?
Yes, I was being taught how life should have been. Now, you'd think that you would get beat up and tormented, and it was not any of that. Not any of that. I was being taught how I could have done better. Which is to give people hope, to love people, to share with other people. And I did not see any of my riches. None of them. I didn't see any of my cars. I didn't see any of my money. I didn't see any of my toys there. But what I did see is how I treated other people. And it took me, Chris, 40 years to process everything that I saw because I had PTSD because I was sent back to learn.
What was the moment? What was it like to be sent back? I mean, what was the turning point there? Happens.
Let me tell you how
we
that
don't want to
happened.
tell everything because we want people to buy the book. We do want people to buy the book.
Well, yeah, you know what? It's not all about buying the book, Chris.
Okay.
That helps.
Okay.
The money from that book goes to our foundation, for the children with special needs. But after I had my little video experience and I felt the emotions of all that, I stood there and I went, I did it. It was all me. There was nobody to argue with or tell why I did it a certain way. You just accept what you did because everything that was discussed was either right or wrong, good or bad. And, we are given choices. Every one of us here are given choices to either do things that are right or do things that are wrong. And we have to live by those consequences. After sitting there and going through that, Chris, I was told to walk towards the cloud. And the most unusual thing happened because when I started going to the cloud, to the sides of the cloud were iridescent blue sky that was just absolutely beautiful. And I just sat there and observed how the rays came out from behind the clouds as if to pull me towards that cloud. But the most unusual thing happened is when I looked to my sides, the flowers turned and faced towards me. The grass turned and faced towards me as if to push me towards that cloud. It was the most comforting and peaceful feeling that you could ever imagine, because it was so natural. It wasn't supernatural. It was natural, which in life, you want hope, you want peace, you want unconditional love. I experienced that, and it was something that was absolutely beautiful. When I got up to the cloud, before getting to the cloud, there were 3 different clouds. The 2 on the side were pure white, but the one in the middle was, the best way to describe it is like if you look at a car that has a pearl color, and you see blues and purples and blacks, depends on how the sun hits it. Well, the middle cloud was like that, and it was beautiful. When I got up to the cloud, an arm came to the cloud, and it was this much of the arm. And the way that arm was shaped and was coming towards me, it was as if that person was taller than I am, and I'm 6'3". So that person, I envisioned being at least 6'6" or 6'7". And the arms on that person were big. They were strong. And when I looked at those forearms on there, it was as if he worked in farming, or he worked in construction, or he was perhaps a carpenter. Now, when I studied his hands, he stuck his hands out, and it was very, very comfortable, very, very comforting. He stuck his arm out as if to take my hand and pull me through that cloud. Now, something while I was studying that arm that was so unusual was I could sense people on the other side of that cloud. I could feel them. It was the most beautiful feeling, as if I was being accepted into something that was another dimension. I was going to learn more in another place. After studying the arm, I was instructed to take the hand. And Chris, I got this far. And that is where I was at, to grab that hand. I had never felt energy flowing through my body like I felt by getting that close to that hand. It radiated all through my body.
Wow.
And it was like energy, like electricity. And all of a sudden, the arm, when it was here, started to pull back. And I tried to grab for the hand again. I tried twice, grabbing for the hand, and the hand went back into the cloud. And the words that came through the cloud was, "It is not yet your time. You have more things yet to do."
Wow.
And that is so embedded into my mind that I will never forget those words. The unique part was I recognized the voice. I did not see that person, but I felt that voice radiate through my body. Just like the person that took me up there, that guardian angel that took me, I knew that voice, but I wasn't allowed to look at him. And I feel like the reason I wasn't ever allowed to look at him is because I was being sent back. And after those words, "It is not yet your time, you have more things yet to do," I went back into my body. I was being wheeled out of the operating room by an orderly with a sheet over my head, and I had a death certificate laying on my chest.
Really?
Saying that I'd been dead for 20 minutes.
Really? Wow.
The unique thing was I could see the doctor over there taking his scrubs off, taking his mask off. He was taking all of his footwear off, and was in anguish because he was just about to walk out and tell my wife that he had lost me in a very simple operation.
Wow.
And I felt it. I felt everything that he was going through. Now, the way it happened was the orderly walked over, dropped his clipboard on my chest, and expecting to take me to where they take the people that have passed away.
Wow.
And I moved, and he said, "Doctor, you've got to come over here. This person just moved." And he came over. The doctor's face was completely white.
Wow.
Because he was just so shocked that I had come back.
Huh.
Now, my wife's experience, Chris, was a lot different than mine, but very complimentary to what I went through.
Yeah.
When my wife was sitting out in the waiting room, she was in there with a whole bunch of people to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
And each one of the people started filing out one by one, and she ended up being the last one in the room when they started wheeling me down the hallway.
Mm-hmm.
And the doctor went running over to her and said, "Everything went all right. We brought him back with a little bit of physical therapy. I think he's going to be okay, but we need to put him in ICU and observe him for 3 days."
Wow.
And my wife completely fell back into the chairs.
Yeah.
And her feelings were, I just lost my husband. Where am I going to work? Where am I going to live? How am I going to take care of my family's needs? You know, her side is, I saw beautiful colors and beautiful things that I had never seen before. And the gifts that were given to me, Chris, were just absolutely unbelievable, but so pure.
Mm-hmm.
And it was things that I had to learn over the next 40 years before I could actually talk about it.
Wow.
They took me to the ICU. I went up there for 3 days. The doctor kept coming in and asking me questions and why I was all over the table. And I told him I didn't want to come back. And he asked me, "What else did you see?" And I told him about the colors and the trees and how I could put my hands out over the top of the grass and the flowers, and I could feel the energy coming from each one of them. And you know, being in his field, you know, they work by science.
Yeah.
And it was something that he had never experienced before. And the last day that I was in there, a reporter came in and he was doing stories on people that had experiences like mine. And he called it a temporary death experience, which is what it is.
Yeah.
Even though it's been labeled as a near-death experience,
Mm-hmm.
I call it a temporary because I was allowed to come back.
Oh.
But when I was there, Chris, I felt no pain.
Yeah. That sounds pretty good to me. You know, pain, nice
No
warm
pain
feeling.
at all.
Yeah.
But for those 3 days that I was in the hospital, Chris, I was in total peace.
Oh, wow.
And it is something that I wanted every single day of my life. In fact, even today, when I tell you about the show called Groundhog Day,
Mm-hmm.
I see it every single day, exactly where I was standing, what I felt, and what I needed to do to learn. And it hasn't been something that has been an overnight experience because I had to learn step by step everything that I was supposed to learn. In fact, even 10 years after, Chris, I started to fall back into my old ways of wanting to help my family, provide for my family and give them what they needed.
Mm-hmm.
And a friend of mine and I went golfing, and we were on the third hole, and we saw a storm coming in over the lake, and we said, "Oh, we can beat it." And we made it to the 8th hole, and both of us got hit by lightning.
Really?
Now, Frank didn't fare as well as I did. Frank thought I was dead. He saw smoke coming out of the top of my head. And I didn't know this until 6 months before I came out with my book. I was not wanting to talk about this stuff until I was encouraged to talk about it. And Frank went to his safe and pulled out a journal and said, "This is exactly what happened that day." And he had it in writing. And so therefore I was able to include his story in my book.
Wow.
Frank went through 5 surgeries.
Mm-hmm.
back surgery. It
Wow,
actually
because of
melded his L4, L5, melded his
oh,
bone.
wow. Jesus. This is
But
this is the most painful show I think I've ever done. I'm just here empathizing and feeling everything. Like,
Chris, that's kind of what I want people to understand is
yeah.
how to feel things and to recognize things and how to soften your eyes and soften your heart and pay attention to what's going on around you.
Mm-hmm.
Little things like being at the grocery store and seeing a lady with 2 kids pulling that change out of her wallet. You know that she is trying so hard to feed her kids.
Mm-hmm.
When I get that feeling that I need to help somebody, I don't question it. Because the day that I stop getting those feelings, it's going to be taken away from me. And I need that feeling all the time. And it's a tough lesson to learn, but it has been a very good lesson for me. And I'm not young, Chris. I'm turning 72, and I'm still learning about what I saw, what I needed to learn.
Wow.
That's all I'm trying to do is teach people just little things.
Mm-hmm. That's important to help people, and you help people through your foundation. Tell us about that and how that works and how that's funded. I believe you mentioned that it comes a little bit from your book sales.
I have a granddaughter. She was born at 23 weeks, weighed 1 pound, and spent 6 months in primary children's hospital. And we named it after her. Her name is Grace. My name is Scott. I've always teased her that her middle name was Scott. So we named the foundation Gracie Scott Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And what we do is we love to help kids. And what our purpose is to help them go to camps, help them with educational programs. And sometimes those educational programs isn't just for the child, it's to help the whole family understand that child.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're finding out is it's not just that child that needs help. That mother of that child puts so much time into that one child to make sure they get to their doctor's appointments and all their needs, all the ABA programs that they've got to go through, that the rest of the children seem to suffer. And we want to be able to help the whole family. And we are learning so much through this process. There was never a goal of ours to have a foundation, but this has been the most rewarding part. In fact, when Chris, the 2 producers that came to me, the book came out in August. In January, I signed contracts to do a movie deal.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to do my story.
Yeah.
And I would not sell them the rights to it because if I did, I couldn't tell my story. And I felt like I needed to share it with other people. So they came back and made me a co-producer. And my responsibility is to make sure that script goes right along with the book so that it will be a nonfiction story. And it's the 2 producers, Bob Condor and Butch Pearson, have been excellent to work with.
Nice.
And the people that we're bringing in to our program to do this movie are people that believe that kindness and hope is important to their lives. And it's been very rewarding talking to these people and getting things lined up. And it's been fantastic because in the contract, their portions of the movie are going to be going into our foundation to help children with special needs. Plus, not only that, it'll be our third will go into the foundation. Mm-hmm. And we are so excited to make it work. And just a lot of good things have happened, which is why I guess I was asked to do it, is to try to help people know that there is hope.
Hope is the thing that makes the human experience continue. I think in spite of darkness and disease and everything else that happens in the world, hope is the one thing that sustains us and sometimes helps take us to the next level. So that's definitely a great message. Is there anything else you hope people take from your book?
You know, the name of our LLC is Life is Precious. And it is true. If we only knew just how important it was for us here to pay attention to life and to take a look at your surroundings and see who you can help. Because I guarantee you can't take your money with you.
That's true. That's true.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, that's funny. You witnessed it. Yeah. There's no Bank Scott up there. As we go out, any final thoughts or anything you want to share with our audience?
Love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor.
Love your neighbor. Love the people you're around. Everyone has their own journeys, and just be aware of their needs. If there's a need, do it.
I like that. What if I try and love my neighbor, but her husband says I can't do that anymore? Is that bad? Is that a bad thing?
Just smile then.
Yeah, okay.
Just,
all right.
just smile.
You gotta love it. Yeah, this is a wonderful message, man. And what a great story. 20 minutes, that's a long time. And it sounds like they called it on you where they went, yeah, he's not going to be coming back. It's kind of wild, man. Kind of wild. But, I guess you had stuff to do. And I guess your wife's happy to have you back.
We've been married 50 years. And it's interesting, Chris. My wife, even until I came out with my story, didn't really know everything that I had seen and done. My kids virtually knew nothing about what had happened to me because first of all, I had to process it first. I had to understand it myself before I could tell anybody else about it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that takes time and to understand. And, it's got to be overwhelming too. So thank you very much for coming to the show. Give us your .coms, .orgs, wherever you want people to find you on the interwebs.
The Scott Drummond, Scott.Drummond.org, or .com, I'm sorry, .com.
There you go.
And then the foundation is GracieScott.org.
Thank you very much for coming to the show, Scott. We really appreciate it. What a beautiful story and all that good stuff.
Well, thank you for having me on your show. It's a pleasure.
It's been a pleasure, too. Order his book wherever fine books are sold and help support his foundation. It is called What Dying Taught Me About Living, out June 12th, 2023, if you're looking for it there on the Amazonian. Thanks so much for tuning in. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, linkedin.com/Chris Voss, Chris Voss 1 on the TikTokity and all those crazy places in it. Be good to each other. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next time. And that should have us out. Great show, Scott.